Have you ever noticed how some people seem to win without even trying? They don't work harder. They don't force their way through walls. They simply wait. And then, at the exact right moment, they act. And everything falls into place as if the universe itself conspired in their favor. Meanwhile, you've been exhausting yourself, pushing, grinding, forcing outcomes that never quite materialize. Now imagine if you stopped measuring your power by how hard you fight and started measuring it by how well you listen to the rhythm of your own life. That's where the real mastery lies. You have been taught that success is about effort, about discipline, about never giving up, pushing harder, being the strongest person in the room. And sure, strength matters, but here's a truth that perhaps no one has told you with this clarity. Strength without timing is just wasted energy. It's punching a wall when the door is right next to you. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this 5 centuries ago when he wrote, "Success depends not only on strength but on timing." Think about that for a moment. The man who wrote the handbook on power didn't say success depends on being the strongest. He said it depends on knowing when to apply that strength. And this distinction, it changes everything. Do you know why? Because being always ready, always pushing, always available for every battle makes you predictable. And everything that is predictable becomes exhaustible. You become the person everyone knows will show up, will fight, will never quit. And they use that against you. They wait for you to tire yourself out while they conserve their energy, watching for the moment you finally collapse. Carl Jung spoke about what he called psychic energy, this inner force that fuels everything you do. And here's what most people don't realize. Your energy is not infinite. Every time you act at the wrong moment, you're not just failing, you're depleting yourself. You're spending your inner currency on investments that will never pay dividends. You think you're being strong. You believe your constant effort proves your dedication. But the truth is darker. You're operating from a place of anxiety, not strategy. You're confusing motion with progress, action with wisdom. And this is exactly what keeps you trapped in cycles of exhaustion where you work twice as hard for half the results. The mechanism is simple but devastating. When you don't understand timing, you're always out of sync with reality. You confess your feelings when the other person isn't ready to hear them. You launch your project when the market is looking the other way. You speak your truth when everyone's ears are closed, not because you lack courage, but because you haven't learned to read the moment. And here's the cruelest point. The more you force things at the wrong time, the more resistance you create. It's like trying to swim against the current. You exhaust yourself while barely moving forward. But someone who understands timing, they wait for the current to shift. And then they move with effortless grace, covering more distance with less energy. Machiavelli wasn't teaching you to be manipulative. He was teaching you to be wise, to recognize that there is a season for everything, a moment to act and a moment to wait, a time to speak and a time to stay silent, a time to push and a time to withdraw. But this requires something most people lack. Patience rooted in awareness, not passivity rooted in fear. So now stop and think. How many times have you forced a conversation that wasn't ready to happen? How many times have you pushed for a result when the conditions weren't aligned? How many opportunities have you missed because you were too busy forcing the wrong door instead of noticing the one that was already opening? This is not about becoming passive. It's about becoming conscious. It's about understanding that your power multiplies when you align it with the right moment. Because strength at the wrong time is weakness, but awareness of the right moment, that's invincible. But before we can master timing, we need to understand why we're so terrible at it. And the answer lies in something Jung called the persona, that mask we wear to be accepted by the world. Your persona has convinced you that you must always be doing something, always be productive, always be proving your worth through action. This is the psychological conditioning that keeps you out of sync with life itself. You've been taught that waiting is weakness, that patience is procrastination, that if you're not constantly moving, you're falling behind. But this is a lie, and it's destroying your effectiveness. The truth is that your inability to recognize timing comes from a deeper wound, the belief that your value depends on your output. You think if you stop pushing, stop performing, stop producing, you'll become invisible, worthless, forgotten. So you keep acting, even when the moment is screaming at you to wait. Jung understood that the psyche has its own rhythm, its own seasons. There are periods of expansion and periods of contraction, times of outward action and times of inward preparation. But the modern world has declared war on this natural rhythm. It demands constant growth, perpetual motion, endless availability, and you've internalized this demand until it became your prison. Machiavelli observed the same pattern in political life. He noticed that leaders who succeeded weren't necessarily the most powerful or the most virtuous. They were the ones who could read the tempo of their time, who understood when fortune, as he called it, was flowing in their direction and when it was flowing against them. The wise leader, he said, adapts their approach to the nature of the times. But here's what most people miss about Machiavelli's teaching. He wasn't just talking about external timing. He was talking about the relationship between your internal state and external opportunity. You can have the perfect moment right in front of you, but if you're not internally prepared, if your psychic energy is scattered, if you're operating from fear rather than center, you'll miss it completely. Think about relationships. How many times have you met someone incredible, but you were still healing from the last heartbreak? The timing was right externally, but wrong internally. Or your career, that opportunity appeared, but you weren't ready. You hadn't done the inner work, you hadn't developed the skills, you hadn't cultivated the confidence. The door opened, but you couldn't walk through it. This is what Jung meant by individuation, becoming whole within yourself. It's not just about self-knowledge. It's about internal readiness. It's about doing the work when no one's watching so that when your moment comes, you're not scrambling, you're not faking it, you're not hoping you can figure it out on the fly. You're ready, deeply, authentically ready. And here's the part that nobody wants to hear. Most of your failures aren't about bad luck or lack of talent. They're about bad timing combined with poor self-awareness. You acted when you should have waited. You waited when you should have acted. You confused anxiety for intuition. You mistook fear for wisdom. You let your wounds make decisions that your healed self would never make. Machiavelli wrote about Fortuna, fortune, as if she were a river. Sometimes she flows gently and you can navigate her easily. Sometimes she floods and you need strong banks to contain her. The mistake is treating her the same way all the time, pushing when you should be building, building when you should be flowing. But there's an even deeper truth here, and it's uncomfortable. Your resistance to timing often comes from your shadow, from the parts of yourself you don't want to acknowledge. You push at the wrong time because you're afraid of what waiting would reveal about you. You force conversations because silence would mean sitting with your own anxiety. You rush into action because planning would require you to confront your own inadequacy. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And timing requires exactly this, the willingness to sit in the darkness of not knowing, of not acting, of not forcing, the willingness to face your own impatience, your own fear, your own desperate need for control. When you learn to wait consciously, when you learn to prepare in the silence, something shifts. You stop being reactive and become responsive. You stop being desperate and become deliberate. You stop exhausting yourself on bad timing and start conserving your energy for the moments that actually matter. And here's what Machiavelli knew that most people never learn. The person who controls their timing controls their life. Not because they're manipulative, but because they've learned to dance with reality instead of fighting it. They've learned to move with the current instead of against it. They've learned that sometimes the most powerful action is conscious inaction. But this brings us to the real question. How do you develop this sense of timing? How do you know when to move and when to stay still? How do you distinguish between intuition and fear, between patience and avoidance? Because understanding this intellectually changes nothing. You need to embody it. You need to feel it in your bones. The path to mastering timing begins with a simple but profound shift. You must learn to observe before you act. Not overthink, not analyze to paralysis, but observe. Watch the patterns. Notice the rhythms. Feel the energy of the situation before you insert yourself into it. Carl Jung spent years developing what he called active imagination, a practice of conscious observation without judgment or immediate reaction. This is your training ground for timing. You sit with a situation, you feel its texture, you notice its momentum. You ask yourself, is this moment opening or closing? Is this energy expanding or contracting? Am I being pulled by genuine opportunity or pushed by my own anxiety? Start small. The next time someone provokes you, don't react immediately. Wait. Watch what happens in your body. Notice the impulse to defend, to explain, to prove. And then notice what happens when you don't feed that impulse. Watch how the energy shifts. Watch how your non-reaction creates a different outcome than your habitual response would have. This is not about being passive, it's about being present. Machiavelli called this virtù, not virtue in the moral sense, but excellence in reading and responding to circumstances. It's the ability to match your action to the moment with precision. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. Developing timing means accepting that you'll miss some opportunities. You'll wait when you should have acted. You'll act when you should have waited. You'll make mistakes. And this terrifies people because we live in a culture that demands perfection, that punishes failure, that tells you every missed opportunity is a personal catastrophe. But Jung had a different view. He saw mistakes as information. Every time you act out of sync with the moment, you're learning. You're calibrating. You're developing what athletes call game sense. That intuitive understanding of when to shoot and when to pass, when to attack and when to defend. The real transformation happens when you stop beating yourself up for bad timing and start learning from it. You ask, what was I feeling when I made that decision? Was I operating from fear or clarity? Was I trying to control or was I responding? What signals did I ignore? What patterns am I now noticing? This requires brutal honesty with yourself. You have to admit when you acted out of ego, when you forced something because you were impatient, when you missed an opportunity because you were scared, when you confused comfort with wisdom, when you let your wounds drive the car. Machiavelli understood that self-deception is the enemy of good timing. If you can't see yourself clearly, you can't see the moment clearly. If you're lying to yourself about your motivations, you'll misread every situation you encounter. The leader who thinks they're being strategic when they're really being cowardly, they miss their moment. The person who thinks they're being patient when they're really being afraid, they miss their moment too. So the first step is radical self-awareness. Get familiar with your patterns. Notice when you tend to rush. Notice when you tend to stall. Notice what triggers your impulsiveness. Notice what triggers your paralysis. Start keeping a timing journal if you need to. Write down, when did I act today? What was the outcome? Was the timing right? If not, why not? What was I really feeling? And here's the crucial part. You must learn to distinguish between your intuition and your conditioning. Your intuition is that quiet knowing, that subtle pull, that sense of yes now or not yet that comes from a calm, centered place. Your conditioning is that loud voice, that urgent push, that anxiety-driven need to do something, anything, right now. Jung talked about the difference between the ego and the self. The ego is that chattering, anxious, controlling part that operates from fear. The self is that deeper, wiser, more connected part that operates from knowing. Timing comes from the self, not the ego. But you have to quiet the ego to hear it. This is where practices like meditation, contemplation, and solitude become essential, not as spiritual bypassing, but as practical training for timing. When you sit in silence regularly, you learn what silence feels like. You learn to hear the quiet voice under the loud one. You learn to feel the difference between anxiety and intuition. You develop an internal compass that helps you navigate the external world. But let's be real. The world will punish you for developing this skill. People who don't understand timing will call you slow, weak, indecisive. They'll pressure you to act now, to commit now, to decide now. They'll make you feel like you're missing out, falling behind, wasting time. And this is the test. Can you hold your center when everyone around you is rushing? Can you wait when the world is screaming at you to move? Can you act when everyone thinks you should stay still? This is where your individuation is tested. This is where you discover if you're living by your own rhythm or dancing to someone else's drum. Machiavelli wrote about the importance of appearing decisive even when you're being patient. This is strategic wisdom. You don't need to announce to the world that you're waiting. You don't need to justify your timing. You simply maintain your composure, your presence, your center, and when your moment comes, you move with such clarity and force that everyone forgets you ever waited at all. Think of it like this. A tiger doesn't announce when it's hunting. It watches, it waits, it conserves its energy, and then, when the moment is perfect, when the prey is positioned exactly right, when every factor has aligned, it strikes. Fast, decisive, unstoppable. That's timing combined with strength. But here's what separates the masters from the amateurs. The masters don't just wait for the right external moment. They actively prepare for it. They use the waiting time to sharpen their skills, to deepen their self-knowledge, to strengthen their foundation. So when opportunity knocks, they don't just recognize it, they're ready to fully embody it. Jung called this holding the tension of the opposites. You're neither rushing nor avoiding. You're neither forcing nor giving up. You're in that uncomfortable middle space where you're actively preparing while patiently waiting. You're present to what is while staying open to what's coming. You're grounded in the now while attuned to the next. This is exhausting at first. Your old patterns will scream at you. Your ego will throw tantrums. Your conditioning will tell you you're doing it wrong. But gradually, something shifts. You start to feel it, that subtle attunement to timing. You notice yourself making better decisions. You find yourself in the right place at the right time more often. You stop exhausting yourself on bad investments and start seeing real returns on your energy. And then something beautiful happens. You start attracting different opportunities. Why? Because your energy has changed. When you stop operating from desperation, from anxiety, from forced motion, you emit a different frequency. You become magnetic rather than needy. You become patient rather than pushy. You become powerful rather than just busy. People feel this shift in you even if they can't name it. They start to trust your judgment more. They start to notice that when you speak, it matters. When you act, things change. When you're silent, there's wisdom in it. You've become someone who understands the weight of the moment. But don't be fooled. This path has a price. You will be misunderstood. You will be called lazy when you're being strategic. You will be called cold when you're being wise. You will lose people who can't understand why you won't just react like you used to. And this is part of the transformation. The old version of you was exhausting themselves to keep everyone comfortable. The new version protects your energy for what truly matters. When you finally master timing, when you learn to align your strength with the right moment, something profound happens. You stop feeling like you're fighting life and start feeling like you're dancing with it. The struggle doesn't disappear, but it transforms. You're no longer swimming against the current, you're riding the waves. First comes the peace, a deep, settled peace that comes from trusting your own rhythm. You stop comparing your timeline to everyone else's. You stop feeling behind because someone else moved faster. You stop feeling guilty because you're not forcing outcomes that aren't ready to materialize. You simply are, in your time, in your moment, in your process. And then comes the power. Real power. Not the kind that comes from forcing and pushing, but the kind that comes from alignment. When you act at the right moment, doors don't just open, they swing wide. Conversations that would have been battles become collaborations. Opportunities that would have required exhausting effort flow naturally. Relationships that would have been draining become nourishing. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is like a woman. She favors the bold. But he also wrote that she favors those who adapt to her nature. This is the paradox of timing. You must be both patient and decisive, both waiting and ready, both humble and confident. And when you embody this paradox, you become unstoppable. Carl Jung understood that individuation, becoming fully yourself, means learning to trust your own inner timing. You stop trying to be someone else's version of successful and start honoring your own path. You stop measuring yourself against external markers and start listening to your internal compass. You become sovereign over your own life. You will lose people who can't understand this transformation. They'll think you've become too selective, too slow, too careful. Let them go. The right people, the right opportunities, the right moments, they'll recognize you. They'll resonate with your frequency. They'll appreciate your timing because it matches theirs. And here's the beautiful truth. When you stop forcing, when you start flowing, when you align your strength with the right moment, you don't just succeed more, you enjoy the journey more. Because you're no longer exhausting yourself on bad timing. You're no longer depleting your energy on closed doors. You're fully present to the moments that matter, and that presence multiplies your power. The person you become through mastering timing is unrecognizable from who you were. You move through life with a grace that others can't quite understand. You seem to succeed without struggling, to win without warring, to achieve without the visible exhaustion everyone else displays. It's not magic, it's wisdom, it's timing, it's the understanding that your moment matters more than your muscle. Today, we learned from Niccolò Machiavelli that success depends not only on strength, but on timing. And from Carl Jung that individuation requires us to honor our own rhythm rather than the world's demands. When we align our power with the right moment, we stop fighting life and start dancing with it. If these insights sparked a moment of clarity for you, hit the like button to share this wisdom with others. Subscribe to join our community where we dive deeper into life-changing ideas every week. We're building a space for reflective minds who understand that true power comes not from force, but from awareness. Now tell me in the comments, what opportunity are you forcing that might need to wait? What moment are you missing because you're too busy pushing? Write, "I trust my timing" if you're ready to stop exhausting yourself and start aligning with your natural rhythm. Let's see how many here are ready for this transformation. Until we meet again, carry these insights forward. Remember Machiavelli's wisdom. Your moment matters more than your muscle. Wait for it, prepare for it, and when it comes, strike with everything you have. The universe rewards those who understand the dance. Wishing you moments of clarity and courage until our next video. May you find our talks not only educational, but also inspirational, and hopefully, ultimately, transformational. See you next time.